of Beams, Screams, and Dreams. As always, I'm your host, Joshua Wiggin.
And I'm Ashley Wiggin. This season, we brought you guys on an incredible journey of the unknown through the eyes of firsthand experiencers.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride between firsthand experiences and just some fun guests that we've had on to talk about phenomena, from their own perspective. We've had a great time.
Not to mention our wonderful extra normal news segment.
Yep.
But we're going to take a short break between seasons so that we can bring you a great mini series.
That's right. It's going to be coming to you. It's going to be myself and our editor, Ben Delory, and it's going to be a little mini series called Delory's DeLorean, where we're going to dive into some of history's mysteries.
Well, with that being said, we can't wait to see you guys back for season 2 in April, but our season finale tonight features Nomar Slevik, an incredible author, a documentarian, all around kind of UFO...
A ufologist, and he's an experiencer as well. So we hope you guys enjoy tonight's episode. Stay tuned. Tonight's guest is an author and documentarian whose newest work, Granite Skies, is available now for purchase. Nomar Slevik, welcome to Beams, Screams, and Dreams. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I know you're taking some time out of your busy schedule here between making documentaries, writing books, and hosting a podcast to come here. We're really grateful to have you on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I also binge a lot of Hulu and Netflix, so
you got to squeeze stuff in when you can, right?
Yeah.
So you're from Maine originally, right?
I am, yeah.
And I was looking in your bio too, and it said that you had a UFO experience when you were very young. I think it said 4 years old.
Yeah. I was realistically, I was between 3 and 5 because I can't honestly remember, so I just kind of say 4. It was actually the first of like 11 encounters that I've had throughout my lifetime.
Wow.
But that first one was pretty significant. I was laying on my bed. I lived in Fort Kent, Maine at the time, which is right at the tip of Maine. And I lived on the St. John River, which connects Canada to the United States. And I could, throw a rock and hit Canada. That's how close it was. So I'm sound asleep one night, and a loud bang woke me up. And my eyes kind of popped open, and I'm sure I was a little bit scared. And I was trying to figure out what had happened or what that sound was. And then I started hearing like the sprinkling of rain hitting the window, my bedroom window. And then I could see like the sky flickering, and I was like, oh, a thunder and lightning storm. So I kind of like kneeled up on my bed and looked out the window, and I'm watching the lightning and whatnot. And after just a moment or so, there was this really like obscene, jagged yellow lightning bolt that got stuck in a cloud. And like if I were to ask you to draw a lightning bolt, you would draw like this jagged yellow line, or like the charging indicator on your smartphone.
Sure.
And that's how my young mind observed it anyways, and that's what my memory still sees. But it was stuck in a cloud, and there was electricity coming off of it, and there was booms happening. And I knew at the time that lightning is only just a split second, but this stayed there. And I don't really know what happened after that. I must have fallen back asleep. I wake up the next morning, go to the bathroom, and as I'm walking back to my bedroom, I can see through my bedroom window down the hallway, and that lightning bolt's still there in the cloud.
Whoa.
I was like, that's crazy. I got to go tell my dad. So I ran downstairs, got my dad, brought him upstairs to look out the window, and it was gone by the time he got there. So now I'm trying to explain to him like what the hell I saw. And he was kind of doing the dad thing, like, pat me on the head, like, yeah, just trying to kind of get me to calm down. And I must have been like really insistent, because I remember him kind of getting down on my level, puts his hands on my shoulders, and was like, listen, it didn't even rain last night. Like, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that was kind of it there. And then fast forward 2 weeks, and I'm being woken up in the middle of the night. I mean, it could have been 10 p.m. I don't know, but I was very young,
Sure.
and I'm getting woken up. So is my sister, and they're dressing us up in all of our winter gear, and we're like, "What? What's going on?" And my dad kind of scoops me up, takes me outside, and shows us the Northern Lights.
Oh,
It's
wow.
the only, yeah, it's the only time I've ever seen them. I can remember it like it was yesterday. Lots of greens and some blues, and it was just dancing around the sky. So uh, at really such a young age, it was instilled in me that weird shit happens in the sky and I should
Yeah.
probably pay attention. And that was kind of like the catalyst that kind of kept me looking up. And it just kind of kept snowballing, into my teens and then into my 20s and into what I'm doing now. But that was the first one. And it was really, really something to see at such a young age.
Well, it also something that's really interesting about that is that it did inspire you to continue to look at it, look for these like
Mm,
anomalies. Because I don't feel like a
yeah.
lot of kids would, say, okay, yeah, dad was like, whatever, it's a dream. You're
Yeah.
fine.
You go back to bed and don't ever think of
Yeah.
it again,
Yeah.
which
Yeah, it
is
was just
great.
the opposite.
Yeah, and that's great, and it obviously informed your life decisions going forward to pursue the path that you've been on.
Yeah. Yeah,
Also,
fortunately and unfortunately, but yeah.
I say fortunately,
Sure.
but the I was actually watching one of your documentaries, and that
Cool.
was Abducted New England. So
Oh, nice.
that's right. That's your neck of the woods. I was curious as to how you came across some of the guests and some of the experiencers you had on there. Are these people that you knew from the area
Uh,
personally, or?
no, nobody that I knew personally. I've been researching and writing about this stuff for, going on 20 years now. And when I first started, it was kind of going through a ton of, old newspaper clippings, researching at the library, trying to build my own collection of like UFO books and taking out books from the library, stuff like that to try to find and collect stories from the Northeast United States. Obviously, I was very interested in ufology across the globe, but it was, I'm a Mainer, and I just think stuff coming from my state or near my state's really cool. So I was really researching a lot of that stuff.
Well, New England is historically a hotspot for pretty much everything extra normal.
Everything. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Sasquatch hauntings. There's even a really interesting Dogman story from Maine, which is
Yeah.
pretty cool. But yeah, so when I first started out, that's what I was doing and trying to collect stories. And I wanted to group those stories into something to share with people. So what do you do 20 years ago? Blogs really weren't a big thing then. And so
No,
I
man.
just knew that I needed to collect stuff, maybe write them down, things like that. But as the years went on and I started getting serious with my writing, I would start to look at newspaper reports, seeing the witness name, and then trying to find and contact the witness to see if they would talk to me.
Oh wow.
So there was a lot of putting my feelers out there to try to get witnesses to talk to me.
Sure.
And now, since I've been doing this so long, I'm getting emails and Facebook messages and things like that.
People come to
Uh,
you now.
yeah, yeah, all the
Well,
time
let
now.
me ask
So
you this too, especially in 2021 now. You don't get like we don't get a lot of paranormal, cryptid, ghost stories and things like that in newspapers anymore.
No,
You
yeah.
don't get you don't really get that stuff. Like they're not going
like
to publish that. And they don't really have like the National Enquirer
Yeah,
out
you
there.
don't see the
Where you're
Weekly
like,
World News, the National
so
Enquirer, all
it's
that
got to
stuff
be
that
really
the.
different now to like suss out those stories to find like fresh stories to talk to
yeah,
a witness that aren't going to be like archive clippings or microfiche in a library.
yeah. Yeah, and that's a big part of it for me is I want to tell fresh stories. That doesn't mean that it happened yesterday, but it basically means that it's really never been published before.
Right.
And that's just because if I were a reader of the paranormal, I want to read something new. Like, how many times can we tell the Roswell story or the
Yep.
Travis Walton story? And not that they're
Exactly.
not great,
Betty and
but
Barney.
yeah,
Was
yeah,
it
yeah.
Betty and
Which
Barney?
is,
Betty and Barney Hill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I was like, hold on. I just did
Yeah,
a Flintstones thing, but I was right.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, Betty Barney
yeah,
Hill.
yeah,
Yeah.
You're dead on.
yeah.
But that
But
I found Abducted in New England to be really great. And everybody did have
cool.
have a new story that I hadn't heard before. You know,
Yeah,
obviously these are fresh faces and folks we haven't seen on the ufology circuit.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
found
And
really
I
interesting too that you documented some hypnotic regression in there as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Some of these people do try to seek out answers on their own, and some of that comes from hypnotic regression therapy. I'm honestly not a big believer in it. I think memory is really malleable
Yeah,
and can be influenced. So, if I were trying to prove to somebody, I suppose, that extraterrestrials are real, I wouldn't. The hypno regression therapy is not the first thing I would point them towards. Uh, but when people have gone through it, and specifically for me, when I can meet with that person in person, and I can, read their body language, see the look on their face, hear the tone in their voice, that gives me much more perspective, and I can trust, at the very least, that they believe what came through in the hypnoregression therapy is true to them, and that's
Right.
still fascinating to me regardless of my belief.
Sure.
So so that's kind of my some of my thoughts on hypnoregression. But
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like movies like well, specifically The Fourth Kind.
oh yeah, great movie.
Kind of gave everybody a really wild idea about what hypnotic regression therapy
Oh,
actually is. The way that it was portrayed in that film was people going into the fugue state and kind of, full body spasms and reliving this experience and something coming through, even like an alien consciousness. I think they
right.
had like kind of coming through in that movie too, which kind of like poisoned the well a little bit, if you
Oh,
will.
absolutely,
What
absolutely. But I'm a huge fan of things that people might consider guilty pleasures, and that movie is a huge guilty pleasure for
It
me.
is great.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah,
great. Don't get me wrong. I think just
yeah,
like that portrayal, kind of made
absolutely.
people be like, oh man, I had a weird thing one time. I wonder if I got hypnotic regression if I'm gonna,
Yeah,
have like this encounter
Right.
again or
Well, I
relive it.
think, a lot of that is that, like, hypnosis with the power of suggestion. You,
right.
like you said, you believe it, you tell your story, you know your story. So you're bound to kind of, and our brain does this naturally in everyday life, fill in the gaps of,
Sure.
what was there, what wasn't there. But it is like your job, it's our job. We suspend all disbelief
Yeah.
for the sake of hearing someone's story, because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I think it's important that people tell their stories, because that's how we started as civilization. You tell your stories. You, whether they're
Yeah.
true or not, there's a lesson to be learned. There's
Sure.
some truth and some importance there.
And for me, a big part of it for me, especially like the last 5 years of my work, like I really don't like give a shit about like disclosure or anything anymore. It's about the person and people, regardless of the catalyst. People are experiencing diagnosable PTSD,
Yeah.
anxiety, depression,
Right.
and regardless of your belief of what the catalyst for that was or whatever trauma that was, there are real people having those real mental health issues. And I think it's really important to have a non-judgmental ear, a kind ear, just to listen so somebody can be heard. That goes that it's just hugely important. I myself suffer from anxiety, depression, occasional suicidal ideation, and it's important these days, in my opinion anyways, to normalize the discussion of stuff like that. And if we do normalize that, then hopefully people will try to seek more help. I know that when I talk about it more, that A, I feel a little bit lighter, and B, it's not so scary, and maybe if I can't reach out to a professional, whether that's financial constraints or I'm just not ready for that yet, maybe I'll reach out to a good friend or somebody that has experience in discussing such things. And so really, listening to people and letting people be heard is just a huge aspect of it. A little bit on the other side of that, on the I don't know, for lack of a better term, the academic side of it, I think it's really important for a matter of like historical record.
Right.
There's MUFON and there's New Fork, and
Yeah.
MUFON is a whole bunch of bullshit. I think people should stay away from them
Yeah.
because there's a whole problematic stuff within their leadership. Uh, and then there's also New Fork. Peter Davenport, personality wise, some people might have issues with him, but he's real, honest guy and just reports what he hears. Anyways, the point is that there's databases, really large databases out there, and that's great, but it doesn't paint the picture of the experiencer. It doesn't get into the nitty gritty details of the encounter, because the encounter might have been 1 second, it could have been 6 hours,
Yeah.
Right.
but what happened after that?
Yeah.
Like the following days, the following weeks, the following months, the following years, like what's going on in their life. Also, I'm interested in what happened the day before, a few days before, a week before, where there are
Right.
some sort of signs where we can try to put together, something to kind of figure out, oh, when somebody starts experiencing this symptom, it could lead to some sort of light in the sky sighting or some sort of abduction scenario. So I think if we can document these as articulated as possible, I think the matter of historical record can be really helpful for people trying to figure out what the hell's going on with what people are seeing.
Well,
Just my two
because
cents
Yeah.
on it.
it's
Absolutely.
as much of a phenomenon as it is, it's still something that is quite normal in our history and throughout the entire
Yeah.
world,
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I believe from like an anthropological, perspective, that does make sense to me. You do need to have this archive of people's experiences, and there are a few that are, always like, yes, I've heard that before. Yes, I've heard that before.
Sure.
But everyone's personal perspective is still so very important, because it also, it involves like your culture and like how you are and what was like scary about it, because some people aren't afraid,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. Very true.
Yeah.
And we've said it before on the show. It always takes like it does take like a huge act of bravery for experiencers to come forward
Absolutely.
and share that experiences
Right.
at the risk of being ridiculed, of being exiled from friends and family and
Right.
stuff, and just or even losing your job in some situations because they're just like, oh, I can't associate with this person. It does take a huge act of bravery to come forward, and it is part of, I think, a healing process through trauma. Like you said, a lot of people experience PTSD and
Ridiculous. I mean, that's
anxiety.
just as ridiculous as racism or
Yeah.
Exactly right. Having talked to as many abductees as you have, or experiencers, what is your? I don't know if you have an overarching theory on it, whether these are nuts and bolts crafts. Is this more of a Jacques Vallée sort of psychic experience that these people are experiencing in their consciousness alone, as a projection of consciousness?
yeah.
I don't. What is your take on, or is it different for each experiencer? What is your take on that?
Well, doing this as long as I have so far, the only thing that I figured out is that I have way more questions than answers.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert. I think as soon as somebody says that they're an expert, that's when I stop listening.
Red
Right.
flag.
Like this, yeah, because this field is so vague, and there's researchers out there that claim to know different species and all this thing and different types of ships, and like
Sure.
that's all just bullshit to me. So what do I think is going on out there? I have no friggin' idea, but something really strange is happening.
Yeah.
People are seeing it and witnessing it, and are potentially being taken,
Yeah.
and I think it's a really big deal. I do think that there is an otherworldly, attachment to it, but I don't know if that's interdimensional. I don't know if that's, outer dimension. I don't know what the hell it is. Uh, but something is happening, and that's all I got.
No, yeah, and that kind of brings me to there's a lot of kind of UFO shaman types out there right now. I don't know what your feelings on somebody like Dr. Stephen Greer out
Yeah,
there
not a
is.
fan.
What's that?
I'm not a fan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about it here openly. I mean, I feel like there are those. And to me, I've said this before. He kind of sells hope the same way like Alex Jones sells fear.
Yeah, yeah, I
So
would agree with that.
yeah, and it's kind of that's another one of those things that kind of poisons the well or muddies the water of ufology in general.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't.
The snake oil salesman, it's the
yeah,
idea of you're out there making money off of other people's actual experiences, other people's
right.
actual, sometimes very traumatizing experiences, and
And sell
you're
yeah,
profiteering,
sell $3,000 tickets to your ranch,
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah,
It's kind of weird. And
yeah,
then you do have other guys out there like Bob Lazar. That's kind of back and forth for me of whether do I trust the
I
Bob Lazar story? Do I not?
yeah, I personally think Bob Lazar is like a nightmare and a train wreck, and he's really difficult to believe in some circumstances. But then there's some things that he said after some research has been done, not by me, but by others in the field, where some of that is true, but some of it isn't true.
Right.
And what I think is that I think something really interesting happened to Bob Lazar early on, and then there may have been some fabrication thereafter. It also kind of reminds me of Stan Romanek, who's
Oh man.
hugely controversial and now like a convicted child predator or on
Exactly.
child pornography.
Yeah.
But I also think that he probably had some legitimate experiences. There's some, before the alien footage, there's actual UFO footage that he had taken when
Yeah.
he was like on a road trip or whatever.
Right.
And I think stuff like that in early on in his encounters were factual, and then I think he found or was thinking he might make a lot of money from this stuff, and
Sure.
and it kind of went off the rails. But that's just my 2 cents on
No,
just a comment. Just a comment.
I've actually talked to some friends about that before. I said that's the phenomena inside the phenomena is when somebody experiences something and then the limelight gets put on them, and
Yeah,
they either like that so much or see the dollar signs, they don't want the limelight to go away, and then they start fabricating to try to stay in it, and that kind of ruins it, and at the same time ruins any credibility they did have, and then it kind of makes everybody look at the entire field and say, well, what are we
yeah,
doing here?
Yeah.
This guy's a proven fake, then it's all a fake, which you obviously can't do that,
yeah.
let one apple spoil the whole bunch,
Sure.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I mean that borders on like victim blaming and stuff like that. Nobody should be doing that. But there are some cases out there, some famous ones that I really find compelling, and I do believe them. Benny and Barney Hill is one of them.
Yeah.
Travis Walton's case is one of them. Like,
that story is just phenomenal. And,
Yeah.
and like, I
yeah,
first saw Fire in the Sky when I was like a little kid. And
Yeah.
obviously I
it's
was
so
like,
great.
Travis Walton's super hot, one, and I'm like, hey man, he
Not the
totally,
real guy, but
yeah, not the real, the actor was great.
who played Travis Walton.
Being a little kid, I was like, yeah, aliens, awesome, let's do it, like, whatever. Even though, of course, he was like terrified, and then obviously the movie
Yeah,
was like exaggerated based off of his actual personal accounts.
It was
Wasn't it?
definitely different.
Yeah.
It was definitely different, yeah.
But I mean, yeah, like that was definitely one of my first encounters with that. Other than just always being like, oh, that's definitely a UFO when I was a kid, and
yeah,
having seen one like myself later, and like, be like, okay, no, that obviously wasn't. But
Yeah.
you could
yeah,
tell the difference now.
So
sure.
to you, is somebody like Travis Walton the gold standard, or what would you say is like the most compelling piece of evidence of the abduction phenomena?
Oh boy, that's a good question because there's a lot of good stories out there. I guess one that I can never get away from too much as one of the most compelling is the Betty and Barney Hill.
Yeah.
There's also the Allagash abductions that actually happened in Maine, but it got
Yeah.
national recognition, kind of like Travis Walton. And it was about four friends. Two of them were brothers, but four dudes who were in Massachusetts came up to Maine for a week. I think it was their spring break, maybe something like that. And they had an abduction experience, and they actually didn't really talk about it for years until one of the four gentlemen started having these really kind of crazy dreams, and it started to affect him like in a medical way where he started to like have some seizures and things like that. But in his dreams he remembers being surrounded by these alien type figures, and he started to research it a little bit, discovered MUFON, ended up going to like a MUFON conference, and that's where he met Raymond Fowler,
Right.
who was, a researcher back in the day. He's actually still alive, just put out a new book actually, which people can get on Amazon. But I think he's over 80 and living
Yeah.
in Southern Maine and just doing his thing. He actually teaches a course at a community college about like alien abduction and things like that.
Oh,
Kind of like
Oh,
a
that's so
that's
cool.
cool.
I would
yeah,
Yeah.
totally take that class.
yeah. It's a little pricey, but yeah. um, but so that Allagash abduction case, really interesting. So these guys get in contact with Ray Fowler eventually, and then Ray puts them in touch with some hypno regression people, and all four of them go through hypno regression. And it was kind of similar to Fire in the Sky, or the Travis Walton case, where it was each individual person not talking to the other after, and they all had the same, very similar, if not the same story. Two of them were, or one of them was like an artist, and so he drew what he's remembered of the aliens, and the other guys were like in real agreement, like, yes, that's what they look like. Their examinations were really all very similar. But anyways, one of the most compelling stories, just with the sequence of events, how it just took years for it to come out, and once it finally came out, they were even reluctant to like go public with it. It was Ray
Yeah.
Fowler who really kind of pushed that piece of it and ended up writing a fascinating book about them. But so yeah, I guess Betty and Barney Hill, Travis Walton, Allagash abductions, those are like three of the most compelling ones to me.
Yeah, I'd definitely agree. I mean, they were all people that had more to lose than gain
Yeah.
by sharing their stories, and
Right.
they definitely didn't seem like the type to be clout chasing. Something that at that time was especially such an offbeat
Yeah.
thing to even talk about in public.
Sure.
That it would be a weird wagon to hitch your horse onto.
Well,
Yeah,
especially in it's you don't talk about your feelings, you don't talk about your experiences, don't talk about
right.
your personal life.
And with Betty and Barney Hill
Same
also
thing,
being an
yeah.
interracial couple at the time
Yeah.
of with pre-civil rights era.
Don't put the
it's,
limelight on yourself in
yeah,
situations
and
like
they
that.
kind of were thrust into that. They definitely were had more to lose than gain in that.
Sure.
I definitely agree with you on
Absolutely.
those being kind of the gold standard there.
Welcome to the season 1 finale of ENN. I'm Ashley Wiggin, bringing you the weirdest and wildest news from around the globe. If it's extra normal, you'll find it here on Extra Normal News. With the Hallmark holiday for lovers quickly approaching, stores are stocking up on hearts filled with chocolates, oversized cards, and all kinds of merchandise to help show your love for your partner. But what about your exes? Don't they deserve some special attention too? Well, an El Paso, Texas zoo has the perfect gift for your ex this season. As part of their annual Quit Bugging Me Valentine's event, you can name a cockroach after your former flame and watch it be fed to a meerkat, iguana, or skink. The event has become so popular they decided to restructure the zoo's petting zoo into the now called Petty Zoo. There's one way to get a sense of relief and closure. Another story out of the Lone Star State comes from the Texas Department of Public Safety. Apparently, the department sent out an Amber Alert for the iconic Chucky doll and his non-binary child, Glenn, on Friday afternoon. The alert went out to the public 3 separate times. A department representative, Ruben Medina, confirmed the alert was a test clearly not meant for the public. But nevertheless, it drew plenty of attention, even catching the eye of Chucky writer and director Don Mancini via Twitter. He responded with the plea to please find them. Chucky's bride, Tiffany Valentine, also took to Twitter to urge her followers to look out for their child. This should make for quite an interesting crossover and rebranding of the canceled 2006 television show Kidnapped. Liam Neeson is also reportedly on the case as a favor to Tiffany Valentine. And to take us out tonight, we go to Slovakia for an interesting turn of events for a man involved in a robbery of a Shell gas station this past weekend. The suspect, a 24-year-old male, held up a Shell station in Bratislava, demanding the male cashier hand over the money and then punching him in the face. The cashier fled to the back when a woman seemingly out of nowhere appeared and offered the crook fellatio. As the mystery woman performed oral sex on the thief, the cashier had the opportunity to alert the local police, who arrived mid-blowjob. The woman, who seemed eager to help distract the suspect, told the police, "Take him, I can't anymore." The perpetrator resisted arrest, and the police had to use force in order to detain him. We reached out to a popular gas station America's side called Come and Go to see if their official policy was adjacent to the woman's actions. Their reply, and I quote, "Please stop emailing us." That does it for this edition of ENN and this season of Wild News. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next season.
This episode of Beams, Screams, and Dreams is sponsored by Beards and Brothers Barber Lounge. Has quarantine got you down? Feeling less than yourself? Visit Beards and Brothers Barber Lounge, where you can be freshened up and brought back to your true potential in a professional, quarantine-safe, and fun environment. While at Beards and Brothers, treat yourself to a hot towel facial massage, straight razor shave, and the top-of-the-line clove and cinnamon beard oil made from all natural ingredients by the Olive My Beard Company. The perfect gift for the bearded friends and family in your life. That's Beards and Brothers Barber Lounge, located at 2159 North Academy Boulevard, Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Of the abduction phenomena.
I want to comment on something. We were watching Otherworldly and More.
Otherworldly and More,
with
yes.
Josh and
cool.
Shauna, I believe.
Yeah.
So something that we were talking about, we had an abductee on our Halloween special. Okay, so yeah, we were watching Otherworldly and More, and Josh and Shauna had an experience that they described in that film that was very similar to one that Damian Gray had, and he was a guest that we had here on our Halloween special. Him and his friend shared the experience of driving in the car, and they were about an hour or so away from their destination, just like Josh and Shauna, lost all the time, and were like 5 minutes from where they needed to be.
Practically pulling up to where they were supposed to be.
And I find that that's a really interesting experience, especially that it has happened to several different people.
A lot.
And how do you lose time driving in a car? You know, are you like, how does it happen? Like,
I know it's literally unexplainable, and it's one of the most fascinating aspects of these abduction encounters. And in my opinion, I think they're treated sometimes, or a lot of the times, as a little insignificant given the entirety of an encounter. You know, like you're actually like seeing an alien, you know, all this stuff. But the missing time piece is like just as terrifying to me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like there's, I was telling you guys, I've seen like 11 UFOs in my lifetime. And I mean unidentified flying object. That term is, or that acronym has become synonymous with extraterrestrial. But I've just seen 11 things that were completely unexplainable to me. You know?
Right.
Some of them I do think were extraterrestrial, but obviously I can't say that about all of them. But anyways, I like to drive at night a lot, and it helps to skywatch. and I am always checking the time, like just to make sure I'm not missing any time. And it hasn't happened yet, so count my blessings there. But yeah,
You're too aware
missing time.
now.
Yeah. But missing time is definitely frightening and fascinating.
Yeah, we really did have to take a pause at that because though I'd heard, even had a guest talk about it before, when we were sitting there watching it in your documentary, I had to take a pause and say, how would the logistics of an abduction even work if you're in a car? Do
Yeah.
they take the whole car and physically, if,
Then
if
they
this
just put
is
you back,
if this
or
is
like,
yeah, is this a the whole thing is gone and now we're moving you down.
Or
We
is
pulled
it-
out of your mind the location where you were going and then bam, well that's close to where we're gonna drop you off.
Or is
We
it
can
like a-
approximate the amount of time.
mind switch, like an imposter that's like operating while, and then
Right.
they just take
Is it
like,
they have just a gray that's an avatar, just kind of
Yeah.
autopiloting for you in the meantime, and then they
That's
swap
wild.
you back out. I don't know. It oddly enough was one of the first times that I had to sit there for a few minutes and be like, what are the logistics?
because you hear
Of
about it
a
all the
car
time, but we
abduction.
never actually thought about it, had
Yeah,
we?
yeah.
Yeah, that it is interesting. And I guess with people that I've talked to, some of the consensus just by hearing a lot of different stories is that the car and everything is taken with them
Yeah.
and transported to a different area. That might be what their perception is, but who knows what's actually happening? Is
Right.
there some sort of space-time bubble that makes them invisible during this time? Makes the car invisible during this time. I like there
It's
you
like the
could
black hole put right in
think
front
of
of you. They drive into it and they drive out of it on the other side when they're done.
yeah, or like Contact, where it's just like to us it's just 1 second,
Right.
but there's hours of experience happening.
The kind of
Um,
driving into a thing is an interesting concept, and that kind of
Yeah.
Well,
goes.
everyone
that
talks
kind
about the thin.
Well,
the,
yeah, and
the
that kind
veil.
of reminds me of something like the missing 411
Right.
type
Sure.
phenomena,
Yeah.
where some people kind of see that shimmer. It's like, oh, somebody just walked into that and
Never
came back.
Yeah.
Or
Wow.
reappears miles away,
Right.
disheveled,
Right.
missing articles of clothing, this and that. Those are some of the
Right.
phenomena that are wildly interesting involved in this. And I don't think with the missing 411 they've ever gone so far to say, this is an extraterrestrial or
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
a paranormal phenomena per se. But I feel as though
I think it's all connected.
It's deeply implied.
Yeah, it definitely feels connected in some way. But the missing 411 stuff is fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. So, for Otherworldly Amore, how did you wind up getting in contact with Shauna and Josh?
Uh, that started with the co-director of Abducted New England, Bill Brock. He and I were putting out some feelers on Facebook about people sharing some stories. I think we had like 4 people lined up, and we just wanted to have some backup, and so that's when we started putting feelers out, just in case anybody dropped out and didn't want to do the documentary. And in putting the feelers out there, Shauna got in contact with me and she's like, hey, here's just this one story. And I'm like, whoa, that's a really interesting story. Cool. Like, if we do decide to use you, is it okay to, contact you, have you be on camera and all that stuff? She's like, yeah, sure. And like, me and my husband, we have like tons of stories. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay. Well, we'll stay in contact. So Bill and I, went to do the documentary, and it turns out we only ended up needing 3 people for the documentary, so we couldn't use some of the other people that we wanted to use. And it probably wasn't until, I don't know, 2 or 3 months later, when I started contacting Shauna again. I was like, hey, remember me, blah blah blah. And she's like, oh yeah, and she started sharing a bunch of other stories. And I'm always in the middle of some sort of project. So I was working on a book. I was like, man, these stories are fascinating. I want to hear everything. Like, can I come down and interview you and your husband? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. So I drive down to Southern Maine, which is, a few hours away from me. And I go down there and I end up having like a 5-hour conversation with him. And like halfway through it, I was like, guys, like this stuff is happening right around you. Like, did you ever think to like pull out a camera or something? And they're like, oh, yeah, we haven't even told you about the evidence we have yet. And
Oh my
Josh
gosh.
goes and gets his laptop. Yeah. So Josh gets his laptop, and there's just hundreds of pictures and videos. And, it barely scratched the surface on what's in the documentary for evidence. And so they're continuing to tell me stories, and I'm just going through looking at all these crazy pictures and watching some videos and all this crazy stuff. And I was just like, guys, like towards the end of it, I was like, this really needs to be told in a documentary, not in a book. Like, people have to see all of this stuff, to really get your story out there. Like, what are your thoughts on doing a documentary? And they were apprehensive. They,
Yeah, of course.
Josh owns a business, and it's a construction business, and he was worried about that. So they asked a lot of questions. I answered them the best I could, with some of the stuff that was holding them back. And I guess after I answered everything, they're like, yeah, we feel really comfortable with you and telling that story, or our story. So yeah, why don't you do that? So anyways, it probably wasn't until a few months later I could get back down there. And I think we did the shoot in just one day, maybe 2 days. And then it was like 9 months of like editing and
Yeah.
how all that stuff goes. But yeah, that's basically how that happened.
Yeah, that's really cool. I enjoyed that documentary, and
Yeah.
I gotta ask too. You having now researched the phenomenon so much, talked to so many abductees, made documentaries with these abductees. You know, have you experienced more high strangeness in your life? Have you felt the void stare back as you've stared into it?
Well, I'm constantly looking for it, and so I've had my own experiences. I don't think they've snowballed or gotten any greater through, me making more things, writing more books or things like that. Like, I don't think there's a connection there. I just keep experiencing things, and it's mostly, lights in the skies. There has been some ghost stuff that's happened to me that I've witnessed. And like, most recently in February of 2020, I saw some sort of creature on the side of the road, like 2 miles from like where I live. It was
Wow.
wild. Yeah, I was. This was like before the pandemic dropped, which feels like 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
But so it's basically this time last year. I think it was like February 10th. It's actually online somewhere where the date's there. But I'm driving home. It's like 6:45 in the evening, but it's Maine, so it gets dark like at 4 in the winter. And so it's complete dark, but there's nobody else on the road. I kind of live in the sticks, so it's a 45-mile-an-hour road. And about 100 yards in front of me on the opposite side of the road, I saw it's the best way to describe it is kind of like one of those Blair Witch stick dolls, but if it were like 5 or 6 feet tall, was like on the side of the road. And so it had these like spindly arms and legs, and it had a head, but it looked like there was antlers or more sticks coming out of the head. And I saw it take this like exaggerated step over a ditch that's on either side of the road. And it had to step over this ditch from the side of the road to get into the wooded area. And when my lights shined on it, it looked like it was covered in like tar, or maybe it was like an exoskeleton or something. It was just really black and shiny.
Oh.
And it's not like it looked at me or anything. It like stepped in. It was like it all happened in like a matter of 3 seconds. I'm going like 45 miles an hour. It's 100 yards away. That's basically what I see. Also, I'm coming up on the area really fast where I saw it. So by the time I get to that area, it's out of sight. But I stop my car in the middle of the road. Again, desolate road, nobody coming, so it's no big deal to stop. I roll down my window because I want to hear if I can hear something crunching in the
Moving
snow.
through.
And yeah, I hear absolutely nothing. But then, like, almost immediately, I'm hit with this like putrid stench. And like, it almost made me want to gag. It was so bad.
Huh.
And it was like 10 degrees out, and I couldn't stomach sitting in the car with it, so I like had to roll all four windows down for like the rest of the ride home. I just had to like air it out. It was really bad, and it pretty much stuck with me almost the whole way back to my place. And that was the encounter. But I told this story on a different podcast. This was a few months ago now, but the gentleman said it reminded him of what he's heard of, this creature called the Vomit Man.
Whoa.
And I guess, yeah, I guess that's something that's been seen really like a handful, maybe a dozen times, but in the South, like Louisiana, like in the swamps. And it's like
Sure.
this stick looking figure, like how I described. And people, like, there's this just such a horrible stench associated with it that people who have witnessed it have vomited. And that's how like it got its name. What it
Yeah.
would be doing up in Maine in February, I don't know, but that's what I saw. I mean, it could have been, it really could have been anything, but it was 6:45, wide awake. I'm not a drinker, and it's what I saw. It was weird.
That is a wild story. I've heard of the putrid smell being even associated
Sure.
with grays. You
Yeah,
know.
Graves, Bigfoot, Dogman, like a lot
Sasquatch.
of different stuff. So
Yeah.
like when that hit me, I at the same time I'm having like my witness hat on because like I have to, like there's nothing I can do about that. I'm a witness to something, so boom, my witness
Absorb
hat
all
is
the
on.
information that you can so that you can.
Yeah, yeah. And then I'm also trying to have my researcher hat on. And I honestly don't like having experiences as a researcher, because it just, I don't know, it's
You're trying to disprove yourself or
yeah, sure.
prove it to yourself, yeah.
Yeah. And but they happen, so it is what it is. But I tried to put my researcher hat on pretty quickly and try to get over the witnessing of it. And so as soon as I got back to my place, I wrote everything down as detailed as possible and ended up emailing it to a buddy just so like he could have it and he can know what happened. And then I ended up sharing it with a fellow researcher down in Tennessee, and he thought it was pretty compelling that he shared it on his his stuff that he does. And yeah, it was a weird one.
Yeah, I would say that definitely qualifies as high strangeness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially you said it was snowing, so you would be able to see that the contrast of the dark skin or body, whatever it was.
Right.
I know you said before that you're not very interested in disclosure anymore, and we do have some recent things that have been released by the CIA and the government, and we're coming up on the deadline for another Freedom of Information Act release of information. Did you find anything compelling in any of the recent stuff? I mean, the Tic Tac UFO. We also have the Gateway process released by the CIA.
Yeah. All of it is massively compelling. Though the Tic Tac Nimitz stuff, like all of that is wild, and it's really cool that it's coming out. But I also have a big issue with the sources, the CIA, the government, and a lot of the news sources that are reporting it. Like, it's not a thing I typically trust,
Sure.
And just because it's in the mainstream and it's something I'm really interested in, that could make it easy for some people to really want to trust it more
Right.
than you should be trusting it. Again, this is just all my opinion, and what the hell do I know? But that's kind of my 2 cents on it. I think it's fascinating. I kind of like, I keep wanting it to happen, so like I hope it keeps, stuff like that keeps coming out, and at the very least it gets passive people maybe more interested in it, and then by really just statistical numbers, some of those people will trickle down and really want to get into or start getting into experiencer reports, and that'll be really cool. I kind of hope that's the final outcome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I say bring on as much of that as possible, but I just say take it with a grain of salt, consider the source. The last 4 years was really that's the toughest it's ever been to trust the government.
Turbulent.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's something I was saying too. It seemed like right after the election, for instance, Fox News started putting out all kinds of UAP videos and stuff like that. I was like, I think they might have lost the conspiracy crowd, and they're trying to rope them back into Fox News
Right.
by
What is their
by dropping some stuff as soon as like the election fraud thing was over. They're like, what can we drop out
What's the
there?
MO?
We know the
Like-
conspiracy crowd loves videos of flying saucers. Maybe we could drop something like that. And
there's always a hidden,
Yeah.
a hidden agenda when
Yeah.
things like that are in play, especially with the government.
yeah, like I
Yeah,
said,
yeah,
consider the
absolutely.
sources.
Yeah, yeah. But bring it on though. The more the better. Again, it's almost a guilty pleasure. I'll turn on CNN anytime I watch UFO videos. That's cool to me. It doesn't mean I'm going to believe them all, but it's cool.
Absolutely. And you do have a project that you are working on right now. I believe it's a book coming out in October.
Yeah. So ever since I was a little kid, I've written fiction, and my favorite type of fiction is horror. And I'm obsessed with horror movies and all that good stuff. So I've been writing horror fiction for 30 something years, but I've never professionally published anything that is horror fiction. And so, I have like 5 books under my belt right now that are all nonfiction. And so I decided that this next book, like, I want it to be fun. Like, writing an extraterrestrial book or just a paranormal book in general is really hard and time consuming. There's so much research. There's a lot of sourcing and getting your citations correct and all that good stuff, to back up everything that people are saying, stuff like that. It's just a lot of work. Not that I don't love it, but I just like to write. And so this next project that I'm doing is just not UFO related factually. There are some UFO stories, but it's all fictional. So a horror fiction book called We Only Come Out at Night, and that'll be for October of 2021 this year. Yeah, and I'm really excited about it. It's actually flash fiction, and flash fiction is typically anywhere from like 500 words to like 2,500 words. I forget the exact
Right.
amount of words, but it's not very much. So you're trying to convey something really intense and hopefully scary in not very many words, and that's just really been challenging, but challenging in a fun way. And I just love telling those types of stories with that kind of restriction. I also have some other thoughts of some novels and some things like that, but this is going to be my first foray into some fictional work.
Are you finding that to be like a welcome break from the heavy, like, personal stories?
Yeah, it's definitely a welcome break. And honestly, it's like a welcome break on my psyche, because I was expressing before, like, I have my own issues with anxiety and depression and suicidal ideation. And the last book I did, Granite Skies, is the story of one man, Mike Stevens, and he's had a lifetime of encounters, starting real young like me. He was 3 or 4 years old. He turned 41 this month, and it's still happening to him to this day. And there was a point in his mid 20s to early 30s, where he really lost hope and personal relationships crumbled. His marriage ended, and it didn't really get a whole lot better personally for him. But for understanding what was happening to him, he really took a turn and started to try to learn as much as he could about the UFO phenomenon, on what's been plaguing him all these years. So that kind of propelled him forward for a little while. And then but as he got older, the anxiety and depression and the PTSD that he's had from these experiences really started catching up to him. And it actually got to a point not too long ago, where he made an absolute decision to end his life. And there
Oh, man.
was even a plan for it. And it ended up not happening. And the reason it didn't happen is just as sad, but also kind of a miracle. And people should read the book to find out what that reason is, because it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's sad and amazing. And so now he's kind of on the other side of it mentally. He at least he has a little bit more hope now. He doesn't want to end his life, at least right now, and I'll take that for right now,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
hopefully it continues to get better. So anyways, uh, saying all that is to, I guess, finally say that that's really heavy shit to hear someone say, and then to also relate with. And because of him being so raw and honest with me, and in telling a story, like, at no matter what cost, like, we actually walked away from a publisher. It's been a whole thing. We decided to put it out anyways, like during the pandemic, which was a bit of a nightmare.
I'm sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
and because of his rawness and honesty, I just decided to share a lot of my truths, and so a lot of my truths are in that book about that kind of same subject matter, the mental health stuff. And because of that, he and I became really bonded. Like, we're not even the best of friends. Like, I love the guy, but it's, we don't hang out or anything. He lives like 4 hours away from me, but it bonded us, like, almost like we went to war together. You know what I mean? So, like,
Sure.
it's just wild. And that's what I'm coming off of, that project. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I need something fun to do.
Yeah.
And that was my podcast, which season 4 just launched. So it was doing my podcast and writing a bunch of horror fiction, and that has at least helped me decompress. A bit of a long-winded answer, but
No,
No,
it's
no, that's great. I mean,
very worthy.
and I totally get that, you guys becoming close and bonded through that, because, I mean, you went to bat for him,
Yeah.
and he trusted you at the same time with his story and his truth. So
Absolutely. Huge.
that's a huge
Yeah,
thing
Yeah.
for anybody to do,
yeah, and he was with me every step of the way. Like, he, like, I was, he's like, okay, I'm going to tell you my story, and then it's, you do your author thing,
Yeah.
and that's a relationship we, started out with. And we kept each other in the loop constantly. And when I told him about some financial concerns that I had with the publisher, he's like, walk away, dude. Like, it's fine with me,
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you sure it's fine? Because that means, like, because I'm under contract, that means I might not be able to write anything. I might not be able to put anything out for a couple years now. And he's like, if that's the way it is, that's the way it is, And so it was just a lot of support, which was really cool and really healthy. And then that ended up working out. Like, my previous publisher, who are just lovely people, we just couldn't come to an agreement. That's all. We don't hate each other, but
Sure.
we couldn't come to an agreement, and gave me their blessing to do whatever the hell I wanted to with the manuscript. And once I told Mike that, he was ecstatic, I was ecstatic, and we decided to go, we're like, pandemic be damned, we're going to tell your story. And it that was really, even though it was hard, it just seemed like it was supposed to happen that way for whatever
Right.
reason.
Well, like, what a meaningful experience, though, too. Like,
Absolutely.
not just being able to tell his story, but being able to tell his story and also have your own like set of experiences to go along with it that make it that much more important.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's definitely been the most challenging, but the most rewarding project I'd ever done. And um, I don't even know if I want it to happen again. It probably will, but uh, I just need something for me right now, and that's this horror fiction stuff.
Right
And
on.
and a great title it has too. I love the title of your new horror book.
Cool.
Hopefully we can get that, as soon as it comes out in October.
And then we'll have you on the show for
Right.
the release of the book.
Exactly.
Cool.
Right. And
Cool.
your latest book was Granite Skies.
Yep.
And that's out right now. Nomar, I can't thank you enough for coming on and speaking with us tonight. And for anybody watching, we're going to share all of Nomar's links here in the bio to this video. Check out his podcast, the I Want to Believe podcast.
That's right. Everywhere you get your podcast.
And once again, man, we can't thank you enough for taking your time out to come and speak with us. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, and I appreciate it too. You guys made this fun, and that's always a big deal for me. So thank you so much.
Anytime, man. Hope to talk to you soon. That was an incredible interview. We want to thank Nomar so much for coming on tonight and sharing not only his personal experiences, but kind of taking us on the journey of what it's like to be there and make the documentaries and novels that he makes.
the perspective of an author from this for this field is incredible, and we look forward to his break from his traditional writing into his horror fiction that he's got coming out October of 2021. That's called We Only Come Out at Night.
Yeah, I super look forward to that. Checking out a little flash fiction from him is going to be great. We also want to take this time to thank everybody that has been on Beam Screams and Dreams. Not only the guests, but everybody that has watched and supported us on this journey so far. We've had a lot of fun making this series, and we plan to keep it going for as long as we can.
Definitely couldn't have done any of this without our incredible guests and without all these amazing viewers that we've had so far. And keep it going. Check the link in the descriptions for Nomar's information, for our information. And don't forget, just because we're not here for season 2 just yet, we still have that mini-series coming out.
That's right. Look forward to Delory's DeLorean coming out soon. And actually, we're going to be bringing you guys a season 1 wrap party coming up in about 2 weeks. We look forward to doing that as well.
We're going to have some other guests back on that you guys really enjoyed watching, and I think it'll be a nice little sit down and
kind of a fun little chat between everybody. So, as always, thank you for tuning in to Beam, Screams, and Dreams.
See you next season.